Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to The Upside. This is our virtual show brought to you by the Associated Jewish Federation of Baltimore and JMOR Magazine to keep Jewish Baltimore informed during this time of uncertainty. I'm Jonathan Oleski with JMOR, and we've got a great show planned for you today. If you have any questions for our guests, you can do one of two things. Type them into the Zoom chat, and we'll read them to the guests, or message us via JMOR's Facebook page. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce your hosts, Beth Goldsmith, Chair of the Associated Jewish Federation of Baltimore, and Dr. Scott Rifkin, publisher of JMOR. Beth and Scott, take it away.
Thanks, Jonathan. Last year, Hillel reported that anti-Semitic incidents reached an all-time high at North American colleges and universities. At the same time, anti-Israel rhetoric continued to grow as activists equated Zionism with racism and became bolder in their call for discriminating against pro-Israel students. Yet, while many Jewish students felt uncomfortable with what they were seeing, they found themselves ill-equipped to respond. That's why next month, the Associated's Insight Israel Forum will launch Know Before You Go, Israel, Judaism, and the college campus for high school and college students. The goal, to help them navigate anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment, and their own Jewish identity on campus. Scott, please introduce our guests.
Sure, thank you, Beth. Today, we're excited to welcome Lisa Bodziner, and Lisa, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, who's the executive director of the Towson Hillel, and Noam Weissman from Open Door Media, a global creator of Jewish film content. Open Door is partnering with the Associated on the project. So let me start with a question, and we'll get into some particulars about. Actually, let's just start with what's Open Door Media, and I'll ask the more provocative questions once we get the introductions. How's that? Beth, you're teaching me. I'm maturing. How's that?
I'm so proud.
Sounds good. So, Scott, I'm assuming that question is directed to me.
Yes, please.
Okay. First of all, thanks so much, Beth. Thanks, Scott, for having me on this call with you. And it's an incredibly important topic. I'm a native of Baltimore. I grew up in Baltimore, so it's incredibly exciting to be here and to speak with you about what I think is such an incredibly important topic that does get spoken about quite frequently. But I think the nuances of it is what I want to flesh out during this conversation. Open Door Media, what we do, I'm the senior vice president there. I'm the chief content officer of this organization. And what we do is we make Jewish and Israel content, and we make it accessible to anyone and everyone through film, through video, through other forms of media, through podcasts. And what we're trying to do is we want to make Jewish and Israel education accessible in a nuanced way. We live in a world that is polarized and polarizing more and more often. What we're trying to do is saying the way to win the day is through nuance. The way to win the day is through exploration of multiple perspectives. The way to win the day is to make sure that we provide content and we get to students where they are on their phones, because that's where they are, with all different types of media. And that's what we're trying to do. We have a film division. We have a video division, we have a podcast division, we have a publishing site launching next month, and we have a website for educators. So that's the mission of Open Door Media, and it's an incredibly exciting time for us.
Wonderful, so thank you. And let's ask the same question when it comes to Towson Hillel. Tell us a little bit about Towson Hillel, if you would, if you don't mind, if we can switch over to our other guest.
Sure, thank you so much. And it's really an honor to be on this call. And I know so many people, even that I'm seeing, have a connection to Towson. Jonathan Oleski, of course, we have board members, and Towson University is over 150 years old, is a local and vibrant university that continues to grow and become the flagship university here in Maryland. So it truly is an incredible place. And at Hillel, we have students thriving. They're interested, exactly as Noam said, they want nuance, they want more understanding, they want community, and they want learning.
Very good. So let me ask a first question. Let me start with Lisa. So my son, my middle son, who's now a young attorney in town, went to college and came home. He didn't go to Towson, but he went to college and came home with this view that Israel treats the Palestinians terribly, and came home with a very negative view of the government of Israel. How do we address that? I mean, that sounds like that's the core of what you're trying to address. But talk about that as an issue and how big of a problem that is, and what our kids are seeing when they go to college.
It's a great question, and I have to pull on an event that happened 2 years ago because, of course, nothing really was live this past year. And it's actually because of Ellen and Jack Zager, who are on this call, that we had a soldier come and speak in the Hillel Lounge. And we had a group of protesters come, and we had to ask them kindly to leave, because it's not because there was complex dialogue and conversation. It's because the protesters were completely interrupting the presenter, the soldier that was speaking. And after that, we can get into what was said and what was argued about. But after that, tons and dozens of our students came up to me and said, first of all, that's the first time we've ever seen such a nuanced, heightened, deep discussion. And second, we do not feel armed and equipped enough to be able to have nuanced perspectives and views. We want to learn more. And hopefully, Scott, that answers a little bit of your question, that it is our job, it's Jeffrey's job, Noam's job, all of our jobs at Hillel to teach nuance, to educate, to partner, to bring in different perspectives, to have dialogue. And it might sound just like hopes and dreams and, pie in the sky ideas, but it is according to what our students want. And at heart, we are a student-run organization. And so for Towson students to come up at that moment and say, we're not scared, we want to be a part of this, but we want to learn and we want to contribute and we want to have our own ideas, and not because we grew up in Potomac, went on birthright, we're told that Israel's perfect and beautiful. They're past that. Our community is a little past that. And so how do we break through? And as Noam said, they're on their phones, they want community. I'm here to also share what students have wanted in this past year. And they don't care if it's another Zoom call. They want community, they want to be learning, they want to trust quality and high content education. And that, again, is why the partnership with Noam is so important. And of course, the Associated and Jeffrey. And to answer your question, it's because, the students want more. They don't want to just be told the same story that maybe they heard in their households, or that after birthright, they realized there was a whole, not another side, many sides and many stories.
So I'm going to jump in. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Noam. It's great to see both of you. I want to jump right in then, following up to what you just said, Lisa. Tell us then how we are going about doing this. What is the program about? Perhaps, Noam, you want to tell us at first? I mean, however you guys have I know you've talked about the program before, so whatever works best for you. We really want to know what the goals are and what the program really will be like.
Yeah, I'll jump in there to speak about the goals of the program and what we're trying to accomplish here. So, I started speaking with Jeffrey Blavitt, and Ruth Miller, a little under 2 years ago. And to the credit of the Federation of Baltimore, what you guys call the Associated, and I'll do a better job calling it the Associated, is really forward thinking about how to go about Israel education. What we need to start doing, and I apologize if this is in preach mode, but what we really need to start doing and thinking about is ensuring that our young people have a cultural literacy. That's what we need to make sure that they have. Just think about it like this. How many Jews in America have heard of the Titanic, but have never heard of the Altalena, right? How many Jews in America are able to name the mayor of their home city, but can't name the mayor of Jerusalem? How many Jews in America, know anything about the complexities and the story behind what happened at Dar Yassin in 1948? Do college-bound students know about the differences between the Zionisms of Jabotinsky and Herzl? Is that something that they have? And I find it remarkable in some ways that we ask our young people to go to college representing Zionism when they don't know what Zionism represents. That is a tall ask. That is a big ask of us. That is something else that we're asking of our young people. And then we say, get to college, and like Scott's talking about with the son, now start defending. Go, defend these viewpoints. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. What we need to do is we need to make sure that students, before they get to college, have an understanding of the history of Israel, the good, the bad, the ugly. That's what we need to do. So our topics that we're talking about in this 6-part series that Baltimore, the Associated, and many funders are going to be helping make happen is these 6 tough topics. Number 1 is, can Zionism and progressivism go hand in hand? Or are they at odds with one another? If you look at Gen Z, and you see that 49% of Gen Z identifies as moderate, 33% as liberal, and only 11% as conservative. How do we ensure that I'm not asking people to have a political disposition. What I am asking is to acknowledge what's going on in the world and how the young people identify, and then say and ask the question, can they go hand in hand? We'll explore that. That's episode number 1. Episode number 2 is going to ask the question, is Zionism colonialism? Is it imperialism? Because if it's imperialism and I'm part of Gen Z, then no, thank you. I don't want to have anything to do with it. Is it ethnic cleansing? Did Israel practice ethnic cleansing? Is episode 3, right? 1948. Is that what took place? Was there just mass expulsions going on? Because that's what they'll see. That's what they'll hear. The question of occupation is an incredibly tense, nuanced topic. I've spent time in the West Bank. I've gone to Ramallah. I've gone to Area A. I've gone to Area B. I've seen it. I've been there. How do we deal with the question of occupation? When people talk about occupation, should it be occupation or should it be in quotes occupation, right? And when one person uses the term occupation, what do they mean? And when someone else uses the term occupation, what do they mean? Episode 5 is going to be about apartheid, right? Is Israel an apartheid state? To what degree is it similar to South Africa? To what degree is it nothing like South Africa, right? We're going to explore that topic. And then finally, the 6th topic is exploring the diversity of the Israeli experience. We need to make sure we have no excuses anymore. I mean this with so much sincerity. We have no excuses in 2021 with the technology that we have, that somebody could get to college and dare say, I didn't know. I didn't understand the nuances. I didn't know about 1948. I didn't know what this Nakba thing and Naksa, what does that word even mean? I didn't know. There are no excuses anymore. No excuses. And so we're partnering with the Associated, with Jeffrey, with Ruth, with the whole team, with Mark. I just want to add one more thing here. Mark, I heard on a call last year, Mark Terrell said he gave a talk to a private school in Baltimore. And they were not a Jewish school. And they were saying to him that the thing that they're most concerned about is that they didn't get an honest understanding of the history of Israel. And they just feel incredibly not confident. What I'm trying to do is, with my organization, with our CEO, Dina Rabban, with our founder, Rafael, what I'm trying to do is make sure that we can provide this education to anyone and everyone. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And like I said, we have to make sure that this literacy is something that we take quite seriously. The one thing I would say that really disqualifies a Jewish person from being deeply Jewish is not their debates on what theology looks like, not their debates on monotheism, not their debates on religious practice. But I would say that it's ignorance. And when you're not able to participate in that conversation, when you're not able to engage in a discussion about an issue, and then you don't have a seat at the table, you feel like it's not yours. We have to make sure that young people embrace their story and own their story.
So it seems like we've been losing the messaging war terribly. And it reminds me of the way that conservatives have convinced the poorest people in rural America that the Affordable Care Act is bad for them. They're the group that should have loved it. And because the other side lost the messaging war. In this situation at the college level, it seems like we're losing the messaging war. What do you think of that?
Is that directed to me or Lisa?
Well, either one of you.
I'll let Lisa speak about the specifics at college. What I would say is, I actually don't, Scott, I don't frame it that way. I'm not so interested in the messaging. I'm interested in the education. Messaging is PR. Messaging is hasbara. Messaging is advocacy. That's a different issue, Scott. You're talking about something else. What we need to work on is making sure that young people have literacy on these issues, have the knowledge of these issues, and start caring about them. Messaging is stage 2. But what's strange to me about the Israel enterprise at this stage is that we go to stage 2 before we go to stage 1. Let's first go to stage 1, and then we could talk about messaging separately. And to your point about debates about the Israeli government from earlier, I want to jump in on that, because this is a really, really interesting and important point. Samantha Power pointed out a while ago that, Israel is people are allowed to argue with Israel. But the problem is that Israel is constantly treated differently from other nations at the United Nations, right? The issue is, if Israel is talked about in a different way, that's when criticism of Israel becomes problematic. The point is that Israel's violations, if there are any, deserve to be treated like those of any other country, but they're not. And if you take the mother of all anti-Semitic myths, this is an idea from Yair Rosenberg from Tablet Magazine, the idea that Jews secretly run the world because it's frowned upon to say that Jews control the economy or government these days. What anti-Semites do, unfortunately, too often is they insist that Israel or its, quote, Zionist supporters do. So when you start veering into that becomes problematic. What we need to give people the space for, or the room for, is to have serious questions about policies, like any healthy democracy. But to do those things I just mentioned, that becomes the problem. But on the ground, I'm also interested to hear what Lisa would.
I'm going to jump in to get Lisa back into the conversation as well. Thank you, Noam, so much. Your passion is really palpable. Lisa, so tell us, how does Hillel get involved in this? What is Hillel's role?
Thank you. I apologize in advance for the barking dog. Our new puppy is huge, and I'm at home, obviously. Just an Italian Mastiff seeing some neighbors. So, I think it's critical to say at this point first that every Hillel is so different. There are over 550 Hillels nationwide, not to mention our global movement. So what you read about that happens, I don't want to name any institutions, but it's so different what's happening on campuses everywhere. In a way, we've been very lucky at Towson, where we've had very few incidents where we have had to report and get involved. However, we have had some. And with that, we have had the leadership of course, the Associated Hillel International and Towson University to be there, to have a conversation and to make actions happen. In terms of what the students want and the messaging and what they need, our job, as I was just reminded by a board member, is, and we live and breathe every day, is our job is to listen to students and hear what they want. Like I said, this is a student-run organization. And so if they want to learn more, here's Noam, here's what we're doing. If they want to have a cooking club with the Muslim Student Association. And in fact, we had a very, very successful program a few years back where it was called JAM, Jews and Muslims. And it was launched by student leaders. They didn't want to talk about politics. They wanted to be social, play board games. They actually made JAM for one of their programs. I have to give my predecessor, Noam, who's now the director at Hopkins, he helped launch this. And they wanted to just learn, be friends, communicate, connect. And so if that's what students want, I think there's this messaging, speaking of messaging, that every campus is in disarray. The Jews and Muslims can't talk. They can't be in the same room. Jews that are, identified to the right and Jews that identify to the left can't be in the same room. It's not always like that. Our students, I think, come with a little more openness. Some are very opinionative. And in fact, our staff just sent me a few quotes from students about our Israel Learning Fellowship, because like I said, our students wanted to have community this year. And we launched for the first time our Israel Learning Fellowship and had 12 students coming from, dialing in on Zoom, not dialing in, clicking on a link, from Jersey to Florida to right here in Reisterstown, Pikesville. They all had different perspectives. And with the content and dialogue and our staff that facilitated the conversations, they learned and they grew from each other. And of course, it's not a perfect picture, but I would say, again, to Noam's point, we listen to our students and hear what they want and try and provide that. If they want to have a rally, we'll try and make it happen. As a result, actually, 2.5 years ago, 3 API guys were assaulted, and it happened right at the end of graduation. They were called anti-Semitic names. It happened on a late Saturday night. We met with the president at the time of API, the student leaders, and at our annual event, Dr. Schatzel, Kim Schatzel, the president of the university, brought her entire senior leadership team. Of course, Mark Terrell and Ruth came, and there was a message of peace, learning, support. And that fall, because our students were so bombarded with exams and really overwhelmed with lawyers, that fall wanted to have a peace rally. And Josh Letner, the president at the time, who was amazing, helped fundraise, networked with local leaders, community, faith-based leaders all around the community. And we put on a peace rally for all of Greek life and everyone else at the university that wanted to join, with over 1,000 people. And so when our students do want to take action, we're there to support, and they know that that's what Hillel is. We're a vehicle for education, community building, identity, exploration, and really not to tell them how to be a Jew, how to be a Zionist, how to be a cynic, but how to continue to ask questions and provide content. So that's what, again, I can speak very subjectively saying that's what's happening on Towson Hillel's virtual campus.
Thanks, Lisa. Great response. And I want to go further with both of you while we're sort of thinking broadly here. What else can parents do? We all want to make sure when we send our child off that we are doing the best job possible to prepare them for it. So can you tell us a little about what you think we can do?
I can certainly answer first. Again, excuse the barking. Our parents, we want them to know that we are here for their children. Of course, we can only put these programs on with financial support. And we want parents to get involved. It's a little bit related, but we deliver over 55 Shabbat meals every other Friday to students, to the door, contactless delivery. I had a non-Jewish mom write me on Facebook and say, "This is so amazing, I want to get involved." And now she's one of our volunteers delivering Shabbat meals. So, what we want from parents, as the executive director, is to know that we're supporting your students. They might think differently than you, and that's okay. But we are here to educate, we're here to support them in community, and we can only make this happen with resources. I also want to share, we have a student who's in Cherry Hill. She's a freshman. She has never been on Towson's campus. She is a Towson University student. She has never been on campus. She has participated in 3 learning fellowships of ours, and she says her best friend is from a Jewish learning fellowship she took with Towson Hillel fall semester. And so it just goes to the power of what Hillel can honestly provide for your child. At this time, who thought they would be a freshman meeting friends in this kind of atmosphere? Yet we are still there. And, ultimately, whether we're sending them to Birthright or doing a more nuanced trip, which includes visiting East Jerusalem and other areas that might not necessarily be, on the itinerary for what you would want to see for your child, we have, your kid's best interest in mind. We happen to have a few parents of students on the call, one of our board members, and, it's just incredible to know that our parents care this much, and we want them to continue to know what we do and know that, as a parent, I can only hope that my kids, when they're old enough, get to experience Hillel the way that I did as a student in Madison, Wisconsin, and our current students do.
Noam, I'm sure, thank you. Thanks, Lisa. Noam, I'm sure you want to weigh in here on what parents can do, what parents should be doing before sending our children off.
Beth, you know me well. I definitely do want to add a few pieces. I'll mention five specific things that I think could be really helpful. Number one is to learn about the Instagram called Jewish on Campus. We actually just brought the founders of it, Isaac DeCastro and Julia Jassy, to Open Door Media. It talks about the anti-Semitic experience that Jews have on campus that they often go through. And to see this happening live and being aware of it, they have 27,000 followers right now. So that's number one. Number two is learn technology. What do I mean by that? Know about the new platforms that are emerging. You know, there's a new one that just came out called Clubhouse, which I shared with a few colleagues recently, and my CEO taught it to me. Dina Rappan taught it to me. She said, you got to get on Clubhouse and see what's going on there. Learn these different platforms. The world is rapidly changing, happening very, very quickly, and we should be aware of those. And by the way, I should mention Julia Jassy is going to be at my director chat with Baltimore in a couple months. So learn the different platforms, see what's out there. Number three is have to do a plug for my organization. All of our content is free. It's all free. It's on YouTube. Go to Unpacked. Go to youtube.com/unpacked. It's all there. We have around 60,000 subscribers right now, and it's free. It's free. Anything you want to learn about Israel, it's there. It's there. We have a podcast called Unpacking Israeli History, hosted by this guy, which is, yeah, I see you, Ellen, Jack, and you could learn it all. It's right there. Number four, this is going to be a little bit different. Is, my background is educational psychology. I'm a former high school principal. The relationship between parents and children is different than the relationship between grandparents and grandchildren. What young people typically aren't interested in to hear what their parents have to say, but they're very interested to hear what their grandparents have to say. And I think that that's part of during the adolescent time period is what's called attachment and autonomy. And there's this conflict between the two. And so they have like this weird relationship with parents where parents will be like, do this, do that. They'll be like, no, thank you. I'd rather go out, want to hang out, go to 7-Eleven, chill. Grandparents, it's a little bit different. Encourage grandparents to have conversations with their grandchildren about learning this content. And because they see things very differently, very different generation, they're more open. And fifth, I would say, is a totally different angle, which is actually not speak about anti-Semitism so much. What do I mean by that? When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Of course, there's a significant amount of anti-Semitism. Of course, it's a gigantic problem. Of course, we know that there are nearly 40% of European Jews are afraid of publicly identifying as Jewish. It's a problem. But sometimes when you shine a light on something, it could disinfect it. But other times when you shine a light on something, it amplifies it. And so what I would encourage people to do is to start thinking about how can I proactively embrace my Judaism and my Jewish identity through learning about Jewish history, learning about Israel, learning about Jewish ideas and Jewish values, and be proactive about that. Because to me, that is the best defense, is a Steve Nash-led Phoenix Suns offense. That's what I believe.
Awesome. Scott, you've got to come in. I know I've sort of hijacked things. Please.
No. This is more a topic where you're much more of an expert at this than I am. I understand what Noam is saying about having a great offense and how we need to educate folks. And I agree 100%. I do want to get back to my original point, which I think irritated a bit. I think that's education, but that never stopped me before, obviously. I do think that while we've got to do these things, and I think this is a great program, if we don't understand the messaging, we forget the peer pressure that goes on in that age group. And it's got to be constant messaging, and it's got to be subtle messaging. It's not everybody wants to sit down and watch a program. Not everybody wants to think they're being educated. It's background messaging. And it has a huge impact on people that age and how they form their political opinions. And if we miss that point, we're never going to win this war. And I'd love your thoughts on that. And Noam, I purposely threw that out to tweak you a bit.
While he's getting
Okay. Okay,
oh.
sorry. Go.
Yeah, while Noam's getting unmuted, I would say, that's, I have a very close relationship with the Muslim student faculty member at Towson. And I remember when I came in, he said to me a few years ago, you know what? It's critical that students see us having lunch together. That's what he told me. And so every 6 weeks, we would make the point to sit in a public, we happen to love each other, he's like a brother to me. We would sit in a public space, Dr. Kermani, and have lunch and talk about things. And students would come up to us and talk and engage. And that's such a micro example, I know, but it was so critical for me to hear that, because he was spot on with the point about messaging. If students don't see how we can have respect and dialogue and disagree or not disagree at times, then they're never going to learn. And from that has built so many positive relationships. I happen to also be chair of the Religious Council at Towson University. And with 20 other faith-based leaders, we meet every 3 months to talk about what's happening with our students. How can we continue partnership, dialogue, conversation, supporting each other? And, maybe it sounds like broad strokes, but all of these pieces matter so much in how we are setting the example and being honest with our perspectives, but also how we're setting the example to our students. And I know Noam will have a lot more to say.
And that's great background messaging. That's exactly, it's lots of little things. It's not just the big things we do. It's a lot of little things that go into it. Noam, your thoughts?
Yeah, I got some thoughts on this.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking right now. I so resonate with what Lisa just said about modeling. And if we're talking about messaging being about modeling, then I love that point. You can't hope to create a culture of empathy and compassion and understanding if I am not willing to demonstrate that as well. It's just never going to land. It's not going to happen. So what Lisa is doing at Towson, and what I hear from my colleagues across North America in Hillels across the states, is it's really incredible, the modeling that they're doing. And I want to give them a lot of credit, because human beings, first and foremost, is an idea from psychologist Stephen Mitchell, they first and foremost crave connections. People crave connections. That's what we care about more than anything. Before we start learning, it's this thing I like speaking about. It's called Daf Aleph. Before you get to the actual piece of the Talmud, which starts with Daf Bet, the second letter, you got to start with Daf Aleph, and that's the relationship. So I totally agree with that point. And it really does make a lot of sense to me, and I'm happy that that's the focus. I would just say that the battle is really not, and this is why, I think messaging matters, but I want to kind of frame this a little bit differently. The battle is not antipathy. The battle is apathy. The battle is not difference of opinions. The battle is indifference. And if we don't do anything different right now than what we're doing, then the result will be status quo. And so the method of engagement is the real question here. The Jewish world has spent the last X number of years and X billion of dollars working on messaging. I'll tell you a quick story, Scott. I think you'll like this. A funder who I actually pitched to fund Open Door Media, I actually didn't get him, so I didn't win on that one. But true story. I asked him, very wealthy guy. Menachem Begin, 1982, First Lebanon War, Sabra and Shatila, PR is not looking very good, right? Menachem Begin, not looking very good, 1982. This guy, I'll keep him anonymous, goes to Menachem Begin and says, and this was at this time an incredible amount of money. Now it's not insane, but in 1982, he goes to Menachem Begin, Prime Minister Begin, I'm coming to you with a retainer of $50,000 a month on your messaging, on your PR. Menachem Begin, if you know anything about Menachem Begin, looked at him and said, please take your money back and spend it on Jewish education in North America. No, thank you. I don't need your messaging. I don't need your PR. What I need is you to focus on your community and make sure they get a good Jewish education. That's Menachem Begin. That's what I think really matters. A deep, profound education. My wife's grandfather always used to say, shortcut, short life. That's the reality. You don't want to take a shortcut. And I think messaging really, unfortunately, isn't the issue. The issue is education.
So no, we're going to disagree. And we're going to disagree because I don't think that you're going to get enough people to focus on education. So background messaging has a huge impact. I understand what you're saying, and I'm glad you told a great story, but we're not going to agree on that point. The program you're doing, though, is great, and I support it. I think it's great.
And I support messaging when it works well. How about that, Scott?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Subtlety is not my strong point.
So Scott, do you have any more direct questions for them, or should I try and make, sort of?
No, I think the program is great. So don't take anything I said. I like to have a discussion around issues. Your program, then, what you're doing with education is phenomenal. So thank you for that. Make sure you reach out to Jonathan at JMOR to write some stories about what you're doing as well.
I'm on it.
Yeah, we'd love to do it.
I'm sorry. Go on, Scott.
That's okay. I'm done.
Okay, so I just want to point out, first of all, thank you both so much for being here. And I'm going to give you a last opportunity to say anything that we didn't ask and that you really want to get across. I just want to reemphasize, and Scott, I think it brings together what we're talking about today, what you're talking about, what Noam's talking about, what we're all talking about. And it's the whole reason that the Israel Insight Forum was created. It was a brainchild of Mark Terrells, who I think you all know as the president and exec at the Associated. And through Ruth Miller and programming at the Associated, and then Jeffrey Blavitt was hired to be our exec. And what has happened in the last 2+ years has been nothing short of remarkable. People are coming out of the woodwork, literally, and particularly during this time when people are home and when Zoom is what it's all about, to learn more. We started with something called personal opinion dialogues, pods, where people could get little tidbits of information. And it has just grown, I can't even think of the right word, but it has really our adventures now, everything. So I encourage everyone on this call and on this show, and everyone to tell all your friends about the Israel Insight Forum, about how to get on that program. But more specifically, let's talk about, I want to give both Lisa and Noam the opportunity to tell us how we can connect directly with them, with this program, and with their other programs. So Lisa, do you want to start first?
Sure, thank you so much. And I just told my mother-in-law who's on the call, she should get involved. And really thank you to our board members that are on this call and donors, of course, the Associated, JMOR, Hillel International, and Towson University. Our work does not exist in a vacuum, and we wouldn't be here without the support and love and care. And of course, Jeffrey, who's worked so hard to make this happen. And I would say we're, honored to be serving our students and honored to be listening to what they need, what they want, and being able to provide community. I would also add, uniquely to Towson University, 90% of our alumni stay within a 1-hour radius. So if you are on this call and have an interest in being a mentor, taking on a student and internship opportunities, it's about, in a month from now, I have about 25 graduating seniors saying, do you have an internship? Do you have a job? Do you have a connection? I need a new friend network. I don't want to leave Baltimore. So It's also an honor that so many people in this community have a connection to Towson University. And please know our students are eager, and in a time like this, really want to get out in the workforce and become the people sitting around this call one day. So I'm honored and privileged. I was watching the upside from the beginning, and it's truly an honor to be on this call. And we are so excited to see how our partnership with Noam and Jeffrey continue. We're already selecting student leaders and student pods to participate.
Wonderful.
Great, thank you. Noam?
Thanks, Lisa. A few things. I'll start with this, the Jewish ecosystem. I'm starting to really see that the Jewish world is creating a healthy ecosystem that views schools, synagogues, different types of organizations, and now media companies coming together to work together, to collaborate, to partner, to make the biggest impact. Because if we're behaving in silos, we're just gonna, we're not big enough. We're small people. We have to work together, and seeing the work that we're doing with the Associated, with Towson, with the Hillels, with Beth Tfilah, with the different schools in Baltimore, it's incredible. So the Jewish ecosystem is something that I'm proud of contributing to, my little part, and my organization's big part. The second thing is, about education. What is possible? So we have to educate in a way that's also entertaining. And our YouTube channel, which is called Unpacked, it's entertaining. They don't even know they're learning when they're learning. And that's the key. And we have a website for educators called Unpacked.education, which we now have like 1,500 organizations that are using it. We make resources. So if you want to speak to your children about it, if you want to talk to your students about it, amazing colleagues, Sarah Himelis and Avi Posen, are helping make this incredible content. It's really worth looking at and subscribing for it. It's free. And then the last thing I would say before my actual last thing is from Adam Grant. Dina Rabin said to me, "No, you got to read this book by Adam Grant. It's like, it's everything. And it's what I try to be about." And I want us to think about this quote from him that I wrote down. Here's what he said. "We laugh at people who still use Windows 95, yet we still cling to opinions we formed in 1995. We listen to views that make us feel good instead of ideas that make us think hard." And I would encourage all of us to be willing to think harder, to be willing to rebel against low expectations. Because I think that it's interesting. I think it's compelling. I think the Jewish and Israel story is the most magical story in the history of Western civilization. And with that, I want to end with my last thing, which is Hakarat HaTov, which is gratitude to you, to my parents for being on this call, to my wife's parents for being on this call, and to the entire Baltimore Jewish community who is so behind thoughtful, nuanced, sophisticated Israel education. So thank you. I really, really appreciate being part of this.
Thank you. Beth, make sure you mention all the places that this show is seen, and that a couple thousand people hopefully will see it, which is about typical.
Well, that is one of the exciting things that the reason we're still on the air. I keep joking about it with my friends that, oh, my show got picked up for another 13 weeks. Because we really, thank God, seem to be resonating with the community, and we are so fortunate to be able to have great people on our show, like today's show with Noam and Lisa. And so indeed, while our live audience might not be huge, people do watch. We have anywhere, I think the lowest time any was close to 1,000 people, and we've had over 4,000 people view our shows as well. So, and it continues week after week. So please make sure you are telling your friends. If you are on live, please spread the word to your friends. We can be seen on YouTube, on the Associated's website, on JMOR's website. You can find us. I'm going to tell you more at the end. I'm going to use a little learning from Noam today, and I'm going to enumerate my last few points as well. So the first point is a very special thank you to you, Noam, and to Lisa for being here today. And if you are a high school junior or senior or a college student, you can go to associated.org/Jewish on campus. I'm going to repeat that, associated.org/Jewish on campus to sign up for the new program. Second, join us on the Upside next Tuesday at noon, when we will be joined by Dorana Ezekson and Meredith Wiesel from the Anti-Defamation League, as well as Howard Libet from the Associated's Baltimore Jewish Council. And together, they'll talk about the growing rise of anti-Semitism locally and nationally. And third, in the meantime, as always, visit associated.org and jmoreliving.com for more information, stories, and resources, and sign up for the weekly newsletter. And until we meet again, as I always say, please stay well.